You really don't need to add more walkthroughs than you're already doing each week. One is plenty. You probably don't need a better rubric or coaching guide. What you probably do need, though, is feedback conversations that are actually going to move instruction. You can observe all day long, but if your conversations are not changing classroom practice, it's really just documentation on your pretty little spreadsheet. Today, I'm talking about how you can lead feedback conversations that teachers can actually walk away from thinking, okay, I can do that tomorrow. Hi, friend. Are you ready to move into a leadership position? Do you have interests and ambitions that you want to pursue, but feel like you don't know how to take that next step? Maybe you want to start your own coaching or consulting agency. I'm Mel, and I help educators define their career path through correct mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for your career transition. I will show you how to level up your leadership skills, share your expertise in a new way, create impact on a larger scale, and put your leadership in motion. As an educator for over 20 years, I started to feel underused and like I had more to give. I knew when the time had come for me to leave the classroom and affect change on a larger level. Now, I'm ready to help you determine where your talents and skills mesh with your passions and interests, put your leadership in motion, and move into that next phase of your educational career journey. Let me help you define your career path by having the right mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for that next leadership position. So power up and put your leadership in motion. Welcome to the Empowered Educator Show. I'm your host, Dr. Mel. Hello, educators. Hello, leaders. I'm going to tap into my inner Sophia Petrillo. Picture this. You just observed a lesson. The teacher worked really hard. The room was actually calm. Kids were compliant. But as you're observing the learning and you're talking to kids, you're realizing that that learning wasn't as strong as it could be. Now you're sitting across from your teacher that you observed in a coaching meeting, and you have a choice at this moment. You can protect their feelings, or you can produce some growth. Well, guess what? You can actually do both. Today, I'm going to walk you through how you're going to structure feedback conversations that are clear, actionable, and growth producing. And you won't be crushing their morale or hurting their feelings in the process. Before we even talk about how to structure a coaching conversation, let's talk about why you're having it in the first place. Because if you see feedback as something you deliver, then you're approaching the whole episode wrong. Your thought process isn't clear. You're not delivering feedback, guys. You're leading growth. And growth doesn't happen in a single conversation. It happens in cycles. Think about your strongest teachers. They didn't get that way because someone evaluated them once a year. That's how I was evaluated when I was a classroom teacher, and it didn't help me in any fashion at all. When my principal would walk out and leave that little slip of paper with me that said, hey, you did this, this, and this, great. You need to work on this, this, and this. That meant nothing to me. I didn't know how to fix things every time, and I needed that guidance. Teachers grow because someone stays in it with them. They observe them, they reflect, they refine, and they revisit it. That's called coaching, guys. It's a coaching cycle. Coaching says, we're going to work on this together. We're going to come back to it, and we're going to measure whether it actually improved student learning in your classroom. Without a cycle, feedback feels final. With a cycle, feedback is going to feel developmental. Leaders, when you commit to coaching cycles, you're going to shift your identity from that evaluator to an instructional leader. You're no longer the person who rates performance. You're the person who builds teacher capacity, and that's what you want to be known for. And that matters because teachers can feel the difference. If they believe that you're just documenting weaknesses, they're going to protect themselves. We had a teacher who didn't even want us in her classroom. But if they believe that you're committed to their growth over time, they're going to open up. They're going to be growth-minded. So as you listen to this episode, I want you to think about your next feedback conversation. I want you to ask yourself, am I just checking a box? Or am I entering a cycle? Leaders, the way you answer that question, it's going to determine the tone, the trust, and the trajectory of every conversation that follows. All right, now let's talk about how to actually lead one of those conversations in a way that produces growth. Leaders, you know how it is when you're sitting in a meeting and someone's giving you feedback. It might be your superintendent. For me, it's the Board of Education. And sometimes there's a little bit of a sting to it because they'll start with things like, you need to improve this, or you need a stronger this. So for you, you might be saying things like, you need to improve your questioning, or you need stronger engagement strategies. And you know how that feels. It immediately feels personal, and you kind of feel attacked. Before you ever start talking in that meeting and coaching, I want you to think about this. According to John Hattie and his Visible Learning, feedback is one of the highest impact influences on student achievement. But here's what leaders and sometimes teachers miss. Feedback only works in environments where it's safe to be wrong. Enhancing learning requires school leaders and teachers who create staff rooms where teaching is openly discussed. It's not just a place to go and gossip. They also create classrooms where mistakes are treated as information. And they create teams where it's okay to discard information or knowledge that's incorrect, and you don't feel threatened by it. And they create cultures where relearning is not embarrassing, it's expected. If teachers feel like feedback is a verdict, their growth is going to shut down. They're going to shut down. They're going to not be open to having you in their classroom. But if they experience feedback as information, their growth is going to accelerate, leaders. So when you sit down after an observation, you're not just giving feedback. You're reinforcing the kind of culture that you lead. And Hattie frames feedback around 3 very critical questions. Where are they going? How are they going? And where to next? So I want you to make a shift as a leader. The they is both the student and the teacher. So instead of starting with, you need to improve your questioning, you're going to ground it in that shared inquiry. So you may say something like, let's talk about where students were supposed to go in this lesson. What was the success criteria? How did we know that they were getting there? And what's the next move instructionally? I've been in lots of classrooms and I've seen teachers who just move on and they don't pull the class back to whole group and reteach if they need to. They are not informed by the data for next day's instruction. When you frame your questions like I just said, notice what you're doing. You're not positioning yourself as the evaluator. You're positioning yourself as a co-learner examining impact. And you might say something like, when you ask that series of recall questions, about 70% of students responded accurately. That tells us they're secure in remembering. If your goal is analysis, what might be the next move to push them there? Now the conversation is about learning progression, not teacher deficiency. And here's the deeper leadership move that you can make. You model that it's okay not to have it perfect. You might say things like, I'm still learning what high-level questioning looks like across different content areas. Let's figure this out together. When teachers see that you wrestle with practice, they feel safe to wrestle with theirs as well. Hattie reminds us that powerful feedback reduces those gaps between current performance and that desired goal. But that only happens, guys, when people are willing to examine the gap honestly. Your job is not to eliminate discomfort. Anytime you get feedback that's not glowing, it's going to be uncomfortable. Your job is to normalize it. When teachers can openly discuss where students are going, how they're progressing, and what the next instructional move is, without fear, that's when feedback becomes fuel instead of friction. And that starts with how you lead those first 5 minutes of that coaching conversation, guys. All right, leaders, you know that you cannot fix every single thing that you see in one meeting. You know I'm a big fan of Leverage Leadership, Paul Bambrick-Santoyo, and I use that in my own coaching. And his research says that high-impact feedback conversations focus on one concrete, observable action step. That's why when you listen to my podcast, I'm giving you one action step. And it has to be concrete, not something like improve engagement. It needs to be very specific. Cold call 3 students before taking volunteers. You're not going to say differentiate more. That could mean anything. And if a teacher doesn't know how to do it, that's not going to mean anything to them. So when you're having that conversation, you can say something like this. Of all the things that we could work on, I think the highest leverage move right now is increasing accountable talk. Let's script 2 questions together. Now you're coaching, guys, not evaluating. Keep in mind, one bite-sized action step. This one is a game changer and very important. Make the teacher practice before they leave the room. It is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for the coach when you very first start coaching, and it's very uncomfortable for the teacher the first time they have to do it. But we make our students practice for a reason. Many leaders talk about the change, but very few of them actually rehearse it. Instructional coaching research from Jim Knight shows that modeling and rehearsal dramatically increases that implementation because they get that mental model in their head and then they're building that muscle memory so they're able to remember it easier. So instead of saying, try this tomorrow, and then you just show them, you say, let's role play right now. I'll be the student. Yep, like I said, it's going to feel awkward, but do it anyway. When they practice, they clarify their language, they build that confidence, and they are way more likely to implement it. Growth conversations should end with clarity, not just inspiration. But I really think that clarity is inspiration for a teacher. Well, for anybody really, about anything. If you're clear, you're inspired. Guys, you really want to protect the dignity of your teachers while you're still raising that bar. You're not lowering standards, you're raising skill set. And strong feedback conversations are going to include specific evidence, clear action steps, a follow-up date. You can't just tell them to do it and then never follow up with them. You want to make sure that they're actually doing what you guys practiced. And of course, it's going to instill some confidence in their ability. So it's going to sound something like this. I'm pushing you here because I know that you can do this. I want you to try it tomorrow, and then I'm going to pop back in Friday. You're communicating belief and expectation at the same time. Guys, research shows that leaders who focus directly on improving teaching practice have the greatest impact on student achievement. Not culture alone, not vision alone, instruction. You're stepping into that conversation, and that truly matters. So here's a practical conversation framework that you can use. Number 1, name the strength. Be specific and make it observable. Number 2, identify the gap and make sure that there's student-centered evidence to back that up. Number 3, choose one action step. Number 4, model or rehearse it, or like we said, model and rehearse it. And then number 5, set that follow-up. What I like to do is when I'm giving real-time feedback, if I see it in the classroom, I don't make them practice it when we have a coaching meeting. We do debrief and we follow that same framework. However, if they aren't doing it during real-time feedback, when you give them a verbal cue, then model it during that real-time feedback and then see if they can do it. If they can do it right then and there, you may not need to practice. However, it does not hurt to reinforce that with practice in that coaching meeting. And then when you use that 5-step framework that I just told you, they're going to walk out knowing exactly what to try tomorrow. And if they do, then you did it right. So I want to ask you, are your feedback conversations producing growth or compliance? Are your teachers leaving with clarity or just comments? You don't need longer meetings. You need sharper ones, more pointed and focused meetings. And you're capable of leading those. This is Friday, so I want you to pick one teacher today. I want you to go in and look for what they're doing right and give them that accolade first. Then I want you to look for one bite-sized action step and give them that real-time feedback. See if they can do it. If they can't do it, model it. When they see you do it, make sure that they do it next. You don't just model and walk out. You model and make them do it. Then I want you to schedule that follow-up before they leave for the day. If you can't do it today, it's Friday. I get it. Do it on Monday. Start on Monday. That's actually going to give you more time anyway, because you can do that whole process and then you can say, I'm going to come back in your classroom on Wednesday. You're going to practice on Tuesday. I'll be back Wednesday to see you in action. And then watch what happens. I bet you'll be surprised, and I bet your teacher will be excited. If you have not read Visible Learning, a synthesis of over 800 meta-analyses relating to achievement by John Hattie, I encourage you to go out, get a copy. There's so much great information in his book. And the book that I referenced, Leverage Leadership, is the book written by Paul Bambrick-Santoyo, and it is research-based about the current techniques for building exceptional schools by focusing on how leaders can use their time. And you know that I pair that with the Get Better, Faster model. So get that book as well. It's also by Paul Bambrick-Santoyo. Those two books are a really good combination. You know that I have such a love for professional learning, professional development, job-embedded, relevant professional learning. So if that's something that you really need some help with, reach out to me. I would love to walk through this process with you. You can actually send me a text by clicking on the link at the very top of the show notes that says send a text, and I will get that and I can respond to you. Just make sure that you leave explicit information on how I can contact you. You can always reach out to me on any type of social media, or you can send me an email. All of that information is in the show notes, so you won't have any trouble reaching out to me. I would love to help you get started on this process and increase your professional development and professional learning within your building. Guys, if this episode helped you think differently about how you lead instructional growth, would you please share it with another building leader who wants to move from evaluation to transformation? When you share and you subscribe to the show, it helps me grow the show. It helps me to know what episodes you want, so I can keep producing content that you desire and that's going to help you move that bar just a little bit higher. Guys, remember, you don't own the outcomes, but you do steward the growth. And the conversations that you lead today are going to shape the classrooms that your students are going to walk into tomorrow. So keep leading with clarity, keep raising that bar, and keep empowering the educators that you serve. And remember to always go the extra mile to motivate, inspire, lead, and empower.